You're listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast, where development industry insights meet mindset with Trafalgar CEO Joe Abboud. Join one of the property industry's most free thinkers as he explores the path to success and contentment.
Well, let's go to content and uncontent as the two categories now, right? Now that I think about it, right? So there's people that are content and there are people that are not content. And so let's go to content for a moment and see that those people are well balanced. 9 out of 10 of them love what they do on a daily basis. They wake up, they appreciate, every sunrise. They're grounded. They're grateful for the smaller things around them, and all those things there. And, they do, we'll go back to this do good and do well. They do good by themselves. And because they do good by themselves, they do well, right? So we're in this place where that describes the people that are content. And then you've got the masses, right? And my nephew and I had this conversation last night. We were talking about, how many people really are content in the world. I mean, we spoke about success and we gave it a little bit of a financial flavour, but I think what resonated for me from that conversation, and it's uncanny that we're having a conversation today because I must have prepared for it last night with that young man. So, Jonathan, if you're out there, love you, uncle. We got to a place where we started to agree that the establishment doesn't want you to be content, because when you're content, they don't control you. He described it as you're dangerous, but I just said that you're a risk. That if everybody was content, then there'd be an uprising.
Well, and I think it goes back. You mentioned you referenced something that we did the other night. We went to this great presentation at the School of Life. Osher Ginsberg speaking, and he's a really fascinating human to listen to. I mean, he's much more than just the guy that counts the roses on The Bachelor. And one of the things he talked about was that life is really a series of stories or narratives that we agree. It's like road rules. Well, we agree that that's the way it should be, so we kind of follow the rules. And it kind of is what you're saying now. It's like you kind of. It's almost like we get lulled into this, well, this is just the agreement that we have as a society. And absolutely, I think we need those. We need some boundaries. But then tell me about those moments where you don't.
They say that fortune favours the brave, right? Why? Because if you go and follow the rules and you do everything by the rules that the establishment's put out there for you, then you're limited, right? But as soon as you buck that trend, right, and you don't follow the norm and you start to, follow the path less travelled, you start to find that that's probably the path, and that everybody's been cocooned into this way of life that is limiting. Don't want to really go into religion, but Catholicism seems to be based on being God-fearing, and if you can never ever aspire to be like God or in the image of God, how can you be God? How can you even come close to being, we've spoken before about pure potentiality, like how can you achieve everything you're destined to achieve and that you have the ability to achieve if you can never ever be like God? Because God's this big, bad, ugly guy that's going to wield a stick and scold you at the very notion of you thinking a little bit different left field. That's not good. Like, that's repressing. But if the church would teach something like be in the image of God and be like God and aspire to be God, how cool would that be?
Yeah, amazing. And what it makes me wonder then is, so there'd be a lot of people walking around that have lived good lives, have played by the rules, have done, watched their P's and Q's, dotted their I's and crossed their T's and done everything by the book, right? They're not always the ones that succeed, even though they think they're doing what they're meant to be doing, right? So how do you reconcile that? Like, you could think you're living a godly, good life, but it doesn't always work in your favour.
I think there needs to be clear direction and purpose in everything you do on a daily basis. So, we've spoken about before, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I think you need to have very clear direction, exactly where you want to go and how you want to do it, and then build your life. But to sit down and let life happen to you, you leave it to chance.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Then you have to cop what you get, right?
Yeah, like if you're just going to sit back and it's just going to happen to you, then it's happening to you. But if you can happen to life, and that you have that really clear direction of exactly where you're going and what you're going to achieve, you don't always get everything. And a wise person once said to me, I think it was one of the ex-governors said, I heard her on TV, it was a female governor, her name eludes me at the moment, but you can have everything.
Bryce?
Yeah. So you can have everything in life, but you just can't have it at once.
Quentin Bryce.
That's right. So, I heard her on a talkback show or something. So, you can have everything in life, but you can't have it at once, right?
Yeah.
But you can have everything.
Yeah.
But, do you dare to want to seek that? And at what point are you going to back yourself to, let go and let God in a way, right?
So I'm going to get you to hold that thought.
Yep.
Because I've realised if someone's just joining us for the first time, they have no idea who we are or why we're doing this. So we've just launched into one of our usual pretty good chats. So by way of proper introduction, Joe, you have a business called Trafalgar, and you've had that established, I think, since 2010, yeah?
Yeah, much earlier, but in the latest form, it kind of took better shape, right?
Yeah.
So after we sort of learned a whole heap of lessons, Trafalgar was born.
Yeah. And so, among other things, the core of it is property and property investment and finding ways to add value. Now, just having listened to that first part of our chat, it just occurs to me, what's it like to work for a guy like you? What do you reckon they'd say if I asked the team? Maybe we should.
Yeah. Look, you can do that, and I think I gave you the example in the last podcast that we had to go at was, the example of my sister where she thought it was going to be a really difficult thing. I don't want to repeat the story again, but, perception, unfortunately, is reality for most people. But you know what, if they give you 5 seconds of their life and they give you a go and they're open to having a cool conversation, you quickly realise that it's actually pretty cool working for me, because they don't actually work for me. They actually work for themselves, right? We've had that conversation a few times. We've had a lot of conversations.
Yeah, we do.
So, for me, I always say to them is, at the end of the day, the best advice I give most of the people that come and want to work with us is make yourself irreplaceable, right? If you can make yourself irreplaceable, you work for yourself, you don't work for me.
So, but irreplaceable to you, I think, is different to what irreplaceable might be to others. Maybe other bosses, maybe.
Yeah.
But tell me about the characteristics that you look for or you look to. What do you spot when you're having that interview with someone?
It's really simple. It's every time they come to me with an issue or a problem, and I'll just turn it back on them and say, if this was your business, what would you do? So in everything that you do on a daily basis, ask yourself, if this was my business, what would I do? And 9 times out of 10, you come up with that answer naturally, right? Most of the time, people come back to you for advice. It's not really for advice. It's just for you to confirm that their decision is a correct one, right? They just don't back themselves, or because it's technically not their business, they need to just get your assurance that the decision is a right one, it's a good one. So a lot of the times they come to me and they'll say to me, what do you reckon about this? And rather than, try and micromanage and control them, I empower them with, if this was your business, what would you do? 9 times out of 10, the answer's correct. They just don't back themselves enough, and it just comes from that. So I recently went on a trip overseas, as you know, and before I left, I gave a couple of really simple instructions. Head down, ass up. We're going to finish the tasks that we've got at hand. The property market's doing some funny things, so let's concentrate on finishing what we've got. We've got heaps, we've got plenty, more than most people would be able to do. Let's do it, and let's do it well, and concentrate on finishing the tasks at hand. Any decision you make, treat it like it was your own business. What would you do? And if you want to double check it, come back and see me. I said, but go become the person that you deal with, go become his best friend. Convince him that he owes you something, and don't come back without a result in every situation that you've got. I'm going to leave that here and I'll plant that seed. Let's see how that goes for you. One of the times that I've been able to detach myself from the business and empower them, we lost, our development director. I didn't lose him totally. He just decided to go on a different path for a moment. But look, he's still aligned with us, absolutely. But I think the most empowering thing I did was not replace him. And I empowered everybody else with, guys, we're not going to go with a top-down structure. We're going to go with a flat-line structure and empower you to be your own bosses, right? You don't need to report to anyone. The only person you need to report to is yourselves.
So tell me how you've seen a difference in the team then, because that's not a very long time we're talking. We're talking maybe 3 months. So how have you seen things change?
Look, in the time that, we had a development director here, the deal flow from a natural perspective, and what I mean by that is it's not, they're not leads generated by Joe Abboud and his crew, and the various people I work with on a daily basis, but empowering them to go out there and do things. And I really mean it when I said this to the guys. We were at dinner one night and I said, here's a toast for that moment that we're all going to drive towards where everybody's a billionaire on this table, right? And they just couldn't believe it. But I really, really mean that you would be my absolute honour to be sitting amongst the very people that came and entrusted their souls and their lives within my dream and my vision, and the ultimate way to pay that back would to show them success. I know I just labelled it with some money, but
sometimes you have to give them an idea of what they're striving for.
Correct. So I gave them a goal, and I said, guys, go out there and do it. I'll back it to the hill if it makes sense. And to some people, money has to. It drives them. Some people it drives them. But we've got to understand, to become a billionaire, in my opinion, isn't just about having a lot of money. It's about being able to develop a coping mechanism to become one. That, you got to do a lot of cool stuff along the way to be able to hit that target. That's doing a lot of good. And you ain't going to become, that successful through ignorance. I don't think that's possible.
Well, you've got to do it from a substantial place. And taking it right back to the beginning, and you were talking about happiness and contentment, right? If you're striving for contentment, then perhaps you could almost liken being a billionaire to having a moment of happiness, right?
Yeah, look, and like I said, I think the definition of a billionaire to me is a really balanced life. It's doing good and doing well, as we it's just a common theme, that we've been talking about. I don't think you can become that without doing any good. And actually, I think you become that because you do good. And the more good that you do, the more the universe conspires in your favour and allows you to do well.
Cool.
Right?
So what kind of things then, because you could throw that challenge out to a group of people and there are going to be some that just can't pick that up and run with it, right?
Yeah, but that's cool. So it's okay not to be okay, right? We've had that conversation too. Again, we're having so many conversations. This concept that most people suffer from, we heard Gunsberg the other day, and the anxiety and the suicidal thoughts that he was going through and all that kind of stuff was the fact that it's really simple, right? That he wasn't okay with not being okay. But I shared this with one of the guys I do some work with overseas, and I wrote something really quickly and I sent it as a message, and I sent it to a couple of my guys overseas. Guys, it's okay not to be okay, and not every moment, as we discussed and we heard with Gunsberg that day, is that every moment doesn't have to be a happy one. As long as there's an element of contentment through that, you'll get to happiness at some point. But you're going to get some little hurdles and some little trials and tribulations that you're going to have to deal with at the time. So that thing about this anxiety is just anxious about being anxious, right? But if you could just ask yourself, as he mentioned that day, that you could sit there and say, okay, I'm feeling this bit of anxiety. I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to stare it in the face. I'm going to say, okay, so what are you doing right now? Give it its own personality. Have a chat to it. Discuss it. Understand why it's doing it. Detach from it. And then say, you know what? I'm going to let you go off in your merry way, but I'm not going to let you beat me. And so I sit back and I watch where the observer becomes the observed, right? It's kind of like you step outside of yourself for a moment and say, man, what are you doing? And you have a chat to this little mini me, right? And you just look at him and say, well, I don't know, you're stressing me out about something. And then he looks at you and says, well, you've got nothing to be stressed about. And you have this internal dialogue going on. It's like a conversation. Some people call it a conversation with God, right? Have that conversation with God and say, hey, why are you doing this? If that works for you, then that's fine. You can label it what you like. But having that dialogue and stepping outside of yourself for that moment, when the observer becomes the observed, you're bouncing it off yourself, and you save yourself a lot of heartache and pain and embarrassment and all of those things that come with, being in that ugly moment that some people seem to allow to take over them. And then, slowly you start to develop this uncanny habit of a quick reflection within a split second. The Buddhist monk does it in a split second, right? I don't remember what the number is, but the observer becoming the observed and qualifying that it's not okay to react, and then says often it's not the action, it's the reaction. So you don't react, and then you sit there in one split second. If you can get it down to that, and you say to yourself, well, there's nothing to worry about, I'm okay, and then you just get on with your life again. You're cool, you're calm, you're collected, and you're just on your merry way. Eventually that becomes your flight response. But until you can actually train yourself to do that, you're living in a human realm, right? When you need to be coming from a spiritual realm that allows you to step outside of yourself and observe and ensure that every moment is a good moment, and that even when you're getting challenged, that you don't react to life, and that you just find that equilibrium on a more constant level, and then you just cruise through life in a really awesome way.
It's taken you a while to get to a cruising sort of life, though, hasn't it? And you've done a lot of work along the way. You've spoken to a lot of people. You've sought out a lot of advice and guidance, haven't you?
And we'll continue to do that for the rest of our lives. Right?
Well, isn't that one of the exciting things about being alive is being able to learn?
I live for that. I live for those moments, as we've discussed.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, I know you do a lot of travel. You're about to go off again and reconvene with your group in Harvard and take your studies forward a little bit further. But what are those sort of experiences, and what does travel? How does travel play a role in all of this for you?
Look, again with my nephew yesterday, we were having a moment in this discussion, and we spoke about being alone, and most people are afraid of being alone, right? I'm not. I actually think they're some of the finest moments that I get to sit with myself and say, self, how cool is all this stuff going on around you? And then I start this dialogue between me and myself, and I self-reflect. I take a moment to objectively look at exactly where I am at this moment, and that I'm here in this moment because of all the decisions I've made leading up to this moment. And then I write, and I observe, and I have these really cool moments with myself where I start to then either journalize or write a piece of some sort that means something to me at that moment, and I sort of do a stock take, right? It's kind of like stopping back, count the stock, regroup, reset. I'm heading off to Harvard, which has been one of the most amazing experiences of my life, and I'm still not over. And so, I'm heading there excited about meeting 36 people from 19 countries. That's created a network second to none for me of some of the most brilliant minds in the world, and how cool it is that I'm a part of that. And this uneducated guy with no tertiary qualifications, no education, couldn't afford to do it, and I'm sitting there in the finest company in one of the finest establishments, educational establishments this world has to offer, and I'm mixing it with these guys, and that's awesome.
Well, I think the 36 of you obviously bring your own experiences and your own talents and skills and insights to that group, and so it must be a fairly fascinating group of people to be part of.
Yeah. We were discussing this the other day, where one of the coolest things that I experienced at Harvard was in the beginning. So basically what we do is we don't do any, clerical stuff. We don't necessarily go into, learning through any particular kind of syllabus as such. And there's the structure that they run through is they give you actual real life case studies, business transactions with Hilton and Apple and, all of these worldly companies that have been very, very successful in their approach, and we dissect the transactions, right? And in the beginning, I was taking notes, and they were all relative to the case, until a moment that I had, I think in the second lecture, which is the second case study, where I started to draw parallels between that transaction and my business and some of the transactions that I had. And then at that moment, the booklet that I had, where I was writing my notes, the left side was about the case and the right side was about my business and me. And so I started in the beginning writing a really, a detailed list of what was going on about the company. By case number 2, 20% of the way through through the lecture, it started to become evident to me that this all became about me and my business, and that what parallels I could draw between these case studies, these real life business transactions that had occurred, and how I could improve me, how I could improve Trafalgar, and how I could improve everything around me in order to become the best version of Trafalgar and me that I could. And that at that moment, I thought, this is amazing. And so then from there moving forward, it was a few lines about the case that just became really evident, or I put them there just as little markers so that I can remember them. But then there was a big dirty arrow across the page, and then this real lengthy, detailed analysis of my businesses and me and the way that we could improve. And that was just such a cool moment for me.
That's where you get the real juice. I mean, that's
36 of the greatest minds in that course from 19 countries, pretty much analysing my business is the way I took it. 37 plus a lecturer, don't forget, right?
Yeah, well,
so
that's an amazing experience.
Yeah, so that's the coolest thing I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Right? That I could have an incubator, a think tank of the greatest minds, and I'd throw a question out, and I started to then be able to take advantage of really what it is this executive MBA really has to offer, and build on all of the questions, or these maybe some thoughts that I needed qualification for, or even answers to potential hurdles or problems that may be out there. Right?
So we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I want to just expand on that a little bit, because I think this is pretty fascinating. We haven't got to any of the questions that we were going to get
but
to.
That's the way these conversations go, and I think that's the coolest thing about what we're doing, right?
That's right. What among the 37 of you, I'm going to put your lecture in there, what are your similarities? What are the points of commonality? Tell me about the qualities or characteristics.
Look, not everyone's different. Some of the similarities with some of them, I mean, they're definitely all entrepreneurs. They're in completely different fields to me. Not everybody's in property. There was a few property guys, but there was people that are just in all sorts of businesses and from different categories.
So characteristics as people,
They're visionaries. They're all visionaries. The lust for living and life in these people, like burn the candle at both ends, doing 8-hour, 10-hour days and lecturing, finish that, go to a quick dinner, as a group work on whatever projects or assignments they would give us for the day, and then go out and drink, right? And everyone's, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and then at 8:30 in the morning, you're back at the lecture, like you're back at Harvard, just kicking on, right? Nobody took time off. Everybody turned up every day. Everything that happened to you the night before was self-inflicted. Everyone took responsibility for it. They're all go-getters, right? Everybody's inspirational in their own way. Everybody's got a story, right? And I put myself out there a few times, as I mentioned in the first podcast, and I think they're cool moments that at the end of that class, someone would come up and say, "Hey man, I didn't know that about you. That's pretty cool. So tell me a bit more." And then everybody's coming and wants to talk and they want to chat, and you're attracting all of these really cool moments into your life that are teaching you. That, by you sharing, all of your experiences, that you're actually learning in the process as well, right? And that there's these characteristics about everybody's there to learn. Everyone's really cool, really humble. I mean, there are some egos around, but, that creates character. And then, in true Joe Abboud fashion, I dig in deep and I'm going to go break through that ego for a minute and, and say, so, I'll ask a real curveball question. I'll throw something out left field, and the responses I got every time were, the next time we go out, they want to come and hang out again, right? They're going to dig a little bit deeper. What do you mean? He asked me, he had the courage to ask me a question that nobody would ask me. So look, I think everybody's out there searching for the same thing that we're just discussing today. It's just another medium, right? It's just another angle. So, they're all very similar, but different.
Yeah.
There's a bit of yin and yang going on there, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's completing each other to a degree, and everyone's probing and searching, and so, I think for mine, this, the inspirational characteristics, the visionary characteristics, the go-get mentality that I'm not just going to sit back and wait. Let's happen to life and not let life happen to itself characteristic is evident through every one of those from 36 countries, from 19 countries, but 36 different perspectives, 37 including
fascinating
lecture, right?
stuff.
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, to bring that back to a team, that in itself must be very inspirational for them because you're really walking the talk, right? You're not just telling them, go and think about it, your business, or you're not pushing them to do these things without actually putting yourself on the line and doing that for yourself and showing them this is what you can do.
Look, absolutely. There was a conversation, again, I've been having a lot of conversations with a lot of people, right? So a conversation the other night about your kids, they do not do what you tell them to do because you can talk to the blue in their face, right? But once you start to lead by example, I think that's the most powerful way to nurture and to teach a person is to lead by example. Because to be a great leader, I think you need to be able to lead by example. My dad used to, go on a building site and he'd be in, his best dressed clothes. And the concreters were having a little bit of a bludge. Take his shoes off, half in a suit, put his gumboots on, white collar shirt, and he'd start wheeling that concrete barrel. I can see it right there in front of me right now. And he would start working in front of the workers. And the rate in which the labourers started to perform used to just naturally increase because, wow, the boss has got his boots on. I can't sit around and just watch him. I've got to start working, right? And it lifted morale. It boosted the energy in the place. And I think I owe that to my parents because I think they led by example. My dad wasn't always the best example, right? He used to love life to another level. Like I thought I was crazy, but he was he was mad as a cut snake. But my mum was definitely one of the earliest memories of somebody who believed in me and mentored me without even me knowing. I owe her a lot. And my dad led by example. 10 weeks before he passed away, he had a seizure, diagnosed with lung cancer, 8 centimetre lesion on his lung, 9 tumours on the brain. I get the phone call. I go to the hospital. I'm sitting beside him at his deathbed. And within a couple of days, they gave him some medication to reduce the swelling on the brain because that's what causes the seizure. And he comes back, he stays at my place, and he's on the phone. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm looking for a job. I said, man, you got 10 weeks to live. What the hell are you doing? He said, yeah, I'm not just going to sit here. So my dad goes and get 10 weeks to live. He goes out and gets himself a site supervisor's job at a 10-townhouse site for some Chinese people in Granville, staring death in the face. He's on site.
Wow.
Right? If that's not inspirational, I don't know what is.
Incredible. I kind of don't want to leave it here, but I think it's a great place to leave it. In fact, it's really a lot to consider. Next time, we're going to talk about even more, but it's been fun again today.
Maybe we'll get to these questions.
Maybe we'll get to the questions that we really want to talk about. Thank you, Joe Abboud.
Thank you, Holly Reynolds. Lonnie, before I go.
Yeah.
What's the most awesome thought you had today?
The most awesome thought I had today. Oh, you always do this to me. Okay. I love it. The most awesome, I know this sounds a bit sycophantic, but I was really looking forward to having another conversation today.
Oh, no. Well, the hunter got hunted. Okay, all right, good. Oh, I got to pay that.
Go.
All right, thanks, Holly. Thank you for your time today.
No, over and out.
Thanks for listening to Developmental, Property and the Mind podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, available wherever you get your podcasts. Or to talk to Joe, visit trafalgar.com.au. That's TRIFALGA.com.au.